Hello, fabulous friends and fans. Welcome to Synchronicity University. I am your astrologer, Nadiya Shah, and this is your moment of synchronicity. This is part of a series looking at the moon through the astrology chart, and this video looks at the moon in the sign of Capricorn or in the 10th house in the astrology natal chart. So we're going through the signs and through the houses as part of looking at the moon. Now, the moon is so important. I think that the moon can be, in some cases, primary, certainly part of the big three. So the big three in any astrology chart, and just about any system of astrology I've come across, is the sun, the moon, and the ascendant. So one might be more important than another, depending on the system of astrology, but always right up there, top three most important placements that you want to look at in a chart that speak to your journey, what matters to you, and what your essential needs are. Those three placements capture it. And if anything talks about what you need, especially emotionally, what you need to feel fulfilled, what you need to feel cared for, it is the moon. In fact, I think the moon is primary. Of course, it's primary in love, because if you want to move beyond just the attraction of Mars or the affirmation of Venus, and you want to move towards actually having a deep bond with this person, creating a home with this person, you've got to honor their moon. It is so important, especially if you're looking to actually move beyond just something superficial and something that truly and deeply connects the two of you. The moon becomes so important. So in love, it's important. And in life purpose and career, for that matter, it's really important as well. Because if you are feeling fulfilled, it becomes that much more easier to do whatever it is that your spirit feels called to do in the world, whether professionally or otherwise, in terms of your purpose as well. So the moon in Capricorn needs to achieve. That's really what it comes down to. It's got to achieve something. It has to know that it is moving in a path of building something, and it is in the process of achievement. It's not so much about the journey, right? Even though there's a lot of power in the journey, it is actually about sticking with the path long enough to see tangible results, to manifest what was once a vision, and the strength it takes on an emotional level, on a level of commitment, on a level of determination, to gain a sense of self-respect through that journey is what the moon in Capricorn needs. So the moon in Capricorn is going to be one that is traditional. It's one of the more traditional signs in the zodiac. So it is going to be one that honors the hierarchy and wants to participate in that hierarchy in some way. So I can just hear and feel some people out there saying, well, you know, I have a moon in Capricorn, I want to overthrow the system. Well, that might be part of it, right? But what's interesting is that on the one hand, of course, you want to look at aspects to the moon. All else being equal, right? I'm just looking at this from a very basic sign house placement. What aspects your natal planets are making to that moon is going to make a huge difference in how you're able to honor the needs of that moon. But in some way, so whether it is, whether you're really a rebel and you're out there, like I said, you want to overthrow the system, or you actually are in the corporate world, you want to move up that ladder. In some way, you do want to move yourself, in some way achieving something tangible that matters to you. And I think about how, going way back, a few years ago, there was the Occupy movement. It's now sort of morphed and become some other things. But when we had that first burst of the Occupy movement as part of a long-term conversation that was happening between 2012 and 2015 called the Uranus-Pluto Square. So at the beginning of that whole conversation, we had this Occupy movement, and I remember at the time a lot of people were talking about, overthrowing the system, as the case may be. But it turned out that actually there were a lot of people within this movement that were very organized, that had specific goals, that had very idealistic goals, actually, were willing to work towards them, were wanting to create structures so that they would be able to achieve them as well. So it wasn't that it was totally disorganized, far from it. There were a lot of people who were part of the organization who had specific objectives in mind, and had a strong desire to go step by step to move towards those objectives. Well, that's very moon in Capricorn. That is very moon in Capricorn. I was thinking, and a lot of astrology friends and I were thinking, you look at this and on the surface, it looks like, it looks very fire energy. It looks very, because Aries, I don't know when you're watching this, but especially when that square was taking place, Uranus was newly in the sign of Aries. And so it seemed on the surface that this is very Uranus and Aries. But Pluto was in Capricorn as well. And actually, if you looked a little bit below the surface, that Capricornian energy was playing out also. So regardless of what game you're playing, right? And I mean that metaphorically. I don't necessarily mean that what you're doing is light in any way. It may be very important to you, may be very serious to you. But regardless of what arena in which you're in, regardless of where it is that you desire to achieve something that you deem meaningful and to, in your own unique way, leave a legacy, it is still important to you. It is going to matter to you. And emotionally, you need that. You need to feel like you're moving in a direction that feels tangible. And because of that, there is a belief that we have, and I'm very much of the belief, that you can have anything that you're willing to work for. Anything worth having is worth working towards. That becomes especially true with the Capricornian energy, and especially the moon in Cap person knows this on a very deep level, that there is a lot to be gained if you work towards whatever it is that you want. Now, one really famous moon in Capricorn person, if I remember correctly, I'm sure I do, because it really stood out at me at the time, is Jon Bon Jovi. So Jon Bon Jovi has this, if I remember correctly again, Piscean sun. It is a Mercury retrograde as I'm recording this, so I'm really hoping I remember correctly. But if I do remember correctly, Piscean sun and a Capricorn moon. And he's got this, very strong Pisces energy, Neptunian energy. So he loves the music that he does. He has that sort of connection to the collective. He understands ultimately that understands himself as an artist. He's got this whole compassionate part to him as well. He does a lot of community work to lift people up who are more impoverished. So he's got this very strong artistic sense, but then he has the moon in Capricorn. And so if you ever get a chance to learn about his life, I found it very inspiring because you really see how that Capricorn moon actually manifested. You really see how at several key points he said, no, this is the path I'm going on. This is the path I'm committed to. And diligently paid dues again and again, diligently found his way in wherever he could and really dedicated himself to knowing that he was building something that matters to him. And he's done this at different points in life. I mean, that to me was just so perfect for his chart. He was just so a living, breathing example of that Capricorn moon. So creating a legacy matters. Whenever it is now, what you deem a worthy legacy is going to change. This is a moon after all. Wherever the moon is an area of life that changes. And so what you deem as a worthy goal, what you're pursuing, you can have that vision and you're going for it. But ultimately, as you achieve these goals, there are going to be adjustments that need to be made. And because of that, because those adjustments are made, they really can accomplish great things that other people might only dream of. Now, moon in the 10th house especially becomes emphasized the change part of it. These are people who will go through several different career strategies, if you will. Depending on the sign of the moon, it may just be one path, right? Like, again, I keep going back to the example in all these videos of moon in Aries, moon in Aries. But the moon in Aries is very, very committed to a vision that presented itself very early in life. So at a very young age, when they were children, they decided this is what I need, and they will stick to that throughout their life, actually. There will come points and times when they have to make adjustments, they have to make changes, but in some core way, they're staying true to that vision. And the way they understand that might change also, but they're still staying true to that vision. Moon in the 10th house is going to change strategies. Sometimes, again, depending on the sign that that moon is in, it may be different, actually might be different careers. The changes might actually indicate going off in a different career direction than they thought before. But regardless, there is a certain quality playing out in terms of their career where they know that they want to achieve something that matters to them. What they believe it is that is going to give them that sense of fulfillment may go through some changes, may go through some evolutionary steps, might actually transition dramatically at some points in life than in other. But ultimately, moon in 10th house types do achieve something. They do end up achieving something that matters to them because they need to, because it's an emotional need. And so actually, I do remember seeing the charts of some famous people. You know, when you're first learning astrology, you start with your own chart. You go, wow, this really works. So then you start moving on to the charts of celebrities or people that you know. That's part of learning. And then you go, wow, that really works. Then you start moving on. You deepen your practice. You start learning more. You start looking at the charts of maybe you start taking on some clients or looking at charts of people you don't know that well. And this is all part of learning more and more about what it is and how it is that the sky is revealing itself to you in your life. Well, I have actually seen very strong moon connections, whether to the 10th house, moon in 10th house, not uncommon for people who are very successful, and especially successful in the public sphere, because the 10th house is a very public part of the chart. But also you see strong moon connections to the midheaven as well among people who do end up achieving something of renown, of being known in a bigger way than most, because there is that desire to be known, emotional need. And because of that, they will do what is required. They will go in that direction. Our moon is one of our default places that we go because it is where we feel most comfortable. Moon and 10th house types will live out loud. They will really live out loud in a public kind of way. Now the midheaven, and like particularly the midheaven, but the 10th house as well to a certain extent, whereas the ascendant is sort of the immediate impression you make on people that you meet. So you might meet somebody one-on-one and they have a certain impression of you. You know, you might be in sort of a crowded room, or you might be like sort of in a setting where people are taking turns talking. Well, the way that when your turn comes, the way you feel about it, the way you actually bring forth that whatever your comment is or whatever in that moment, that tends to be your ascendant. But if you look at how you're known in a bigger way, right? So normally I think of this as, like, quite honestly, I think of this as like, I've heard it said, I think it was Sherry Turtle or Shelley Turtle, I could be wrong, I'm sorry, but she's a contemporary philosopher. She said that Facebook is not you, it's a performance of you. And I thought that that was brilliant. I thought that that was so perfectly stated. I think of something like Facebook, where people are known in kind of a removed but bigger way, as very midheaven. Now, some people have said, no, it's actually the third house, it's actually this, it's your ascendant. I, for one, believe that something like Facebook, because there is that sense of detachment, because there is that sense of you being bigger, right? You put pictures of yourself really happy and partying. Even if you only do that once or twice a year, if those are the only pictures you have there, then that's how you become known in a bigger sense. Well, whatever your midheaven is speaks very powerfully to what kind of stuff you're posting on Facebook, what your profile is looking like, what image you're projecting, what are people understanding as they perceive you only from that distance of the Facebook page without actually knowing you. That tends to be what the 10th house and the midheaven in particular does represent. The closer the moon is to your midheaven, the more strongly people are going to see that moon. So if your moon is right on the midheaven, regardless if it's just in the 9th or just in the 10th, if it's within, let's say within 3 degrees of the midheaven, that's what people are going to see. It's about the moon. People are going to see somebody who's nurturing, someone who's emotional, someone who's caring, someone who has their heart on their sleeve. That's a very lunar thing. These are the types of qualities that people are going to see if they're looking at you in a larger kind of removed way than just the ascendant. The ascendant is more, if I meet you in person, your immediate impression of me. The midheaven is how you're being seen at large from a larger group. So moon on the midheaven types, they come across as very nurturing in a bigger way, but they can also come across as very changeable as well. They can come across as emotional. They can come across as emotionally needy as well. So depends a lot on how that particular moon is placed. Now, if you're in a relationship with somebody with a Capricorn moon or moon in the 10th house, it matters to them to feel like you believe that they can achieve something, that you support their goals, their dreams for their life. And it also helps if you have some clear goals for your life, if you look like you know where you're going. Traditionally, it was said that if you had Moon in Capricorn or even Venus in Capricorn, and even Mars to a certain extent in Capricorn, that you would be attracted to and want to have a partner who was older than yourself. Well, the way we understand age now is very different than we did in ancient times from which these techniques arose. But what I have found is these types of people, they do tend to want somebody who has something traditional about them. So these types of people do actually want to get married. They do want to go through that process of having a ceremony. Now, again, depending on how that moon is aspected, I mean, it could be like, you know, a way out there kind of ceremony. It could be an Elvis ceremony or an Alice Cooper ceremony. But regardless, these types of people are going to want to actually have that sense of ceremony and commitment. They're going to want, in some sense, to feel that in a more traditional way, you are being respected, they are being respected as a result. And so it helps if you look like you know where you're going, and it helps if you look like you respect them and you honor them, and you're not just sort of playing, but you're actually thinking about the big picture with them as well. All of that is going to go a really long way to helping them feel that you actually understand them deeply, emotionally, and are able to give them what they fundamentally need to feel cared for by you. Well, thank you so much for watching. Facebook, Twitter, Google+, my website, NadiyaShah.com, YouTube comments, please keep them coming. I absolutely love interacting with you guys. A lot of these videos, a lot of the sharing I do on my YouTube channel really is because of you guys. Your interactions, your questions, they help me so much. They make me brave, and it just means so much to me. Please like, comment, share, subscribe. Truly so grateful for this moment with you. Until we connect again, take care. Thank you for watching this lesson as part of Synchronicity University. You can go online at synchronicityuniversity.com or click on your screen if you're on YouTube right now to access even more video lessons, to access horoscopes, interviews with some of the most amazing astrologers in the world, and so much more.